I started this program, A Town in Village 2, some 15 years ago to bring our 3 municipal leaders to one table to talk about matters of mutual concern in the town of Mamaroneck and the villages of Larchmont and Mamaroneck. We evolved from a municipal leaders roundtable to a format featuring leaders in the arts, education, and public service. In a nod to the past, I've invited our municipal leaders to join me today for a conversation. The names and faces have changed since our first programs. When we return, I'll be with Ann McAndrews, Mayor of the Village of Larchmont, Lou Santoro, Trustee and Deputy Mayor of the Village of Mamaroneck, and Nancy Seligson, Supervisor of the Town of Mamaroneck. I'm Alice Bloom. This is A Town in Village 2. Welcome back, and welcome Ann McAndrews, Mayor of the Village of Larchmont, and Nancy Seligson, Supervisor of the Town of Mamaroneck. Thank you so much for being here. Unfortunately, Lou Santoro couldn't be here with us tonight, but we will carry on. There's so much to talk about. I think a lot of people don't know how much you municipal leaders do work together in our communities. Certainly, as we know, Town of Mamaroneck includes the Village of Larchmont and half of the Village of Mamaroneck. The other half of the Village of Mamaroneck is in the Town of Mamaroneck.
Town of
Rye, so sorry.
Which just tells you part of the confusion.
It's very confusing. But we do have many of the same constituents, certainly. Mm-hmm. Everybody who lives in the Village of Larchmont does live in the Town of Mamaroneck, and then the Town of Mamaroneck has a large unincorporated area, and the town provides services. Tell us how you do work together.
There are so many areas. The first one that comes to mind is the Joint Sanitation Commission. And Larchmont and Mamaroneck back in the 30s actually created the Joint Garbage Commission. And it is run, Ann and I are the trustees on it, and the administrator is Town Administrator Steve Altieri. But we work together with a joint workforce and joint administration in collecting garbage in our communities.
Okay, and that's for the Town of Mamaroneck and the Village of Larchmont. That
Yes.
does not include the Village of Mamaroneck.
Correct.
I feel like I've got to sit in for the Village of Mamaroneck a little bit just to clarify. Okay, is there ever any talk of including the Village of Mamaroneck, or is that too complicated?
It seems a little too complicated at this point. They have a separate system, and it is completely separate. But it could certainly be something we'd look into if they were interested, to see if it would create better economies of scale. But right now, and for all these many decades, it's just been the village and the town.
Okay. How about recreation? Is that something you share as well?
Somewhat. A village, I'll say village, meaning Village of Larchmont.
Right.
Larchmont residents are also residents of the town, and therefore can participate fully in the town's
And so that's the
recreations.
recreation facilities?
Exactly,
Right.
for the pool and the ice skating rink and
Yeah.
those kinds of things. But there's also a tremendous sharing of assets that go back and forth. For example, for recreation, let's get away just from town and village recreation to all the different sports leagues, and how the different entities get together. First of all, the schools and the town and the village sit down, along with everybody from leagues, and divvy up the sports schedules and the field use.
Okay, field use, that's a very competitive situation in our community,
sure is.
right? There just
Right.
never are enough fields.
That's right. And a bit of good news, we're going out to bid for the improvements of the Lorenzen Park, mostly for baseball and softball this fall. So it will be, construction will start at the end of the spring season in 2016 and be out of commission until the following spring. But all the Larchmont Mamaroneck Little League is huge, one of the biggest in the states, in the state, and consequently we have all these things that come together on how all of our assets are used to the maximum point of actual overuse. And the worst thing you can do is to take a field out of commission, which you do for the Homics fields. You have to every Wednesday, or something, and consequently...
Every Wednesday.
Well, we take it out of use every actually, I don't know how often, but maybe 5 years, where we actually give it a season of rest
Right.
because they get so overused and they have to be rehabilitated.
But just I think you can imagine the intricacy of these arrangements. So you have the jurisdictions, the municipalities, you have the schools, and you have all the different
Leagues.
independent leagues all coming together and cooperating. And this
And
happens
then how
in
about
many
the
other-
schools as well?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we have an arrangement with the school district for the use of the tennis courts in Flint in exchange for extending their facilities to our Flint summer camp during the summer at Homick School.
And the school actually owns the Homick's pool, but the town is the biggest user of it. We own the Homick's fields, but the school uses those. And certainly the ice rink is owned by the town and used by everyone.
Maintained by the town.
Yes. But you know, the town administers the volunteer ambulance corps for the village and both villages, Mamaroneck and Larchmont, and the unincorporated town. And we also administer the senior citizen programs and the Section 8 programs. So as a tri-municipal group, you know, we administer those, and that services the whole community.
Has it always been that way, or have you, in your tenure, and you've been mayor for, and certainly been involved in public service for a long time, but you've been involved for a long time, Nancy, you certainly have been involved first with Long Island Sound Task Force and so many other ways, and certainly as supervisor for the last few years. Have you seen cooperation growing amongst your municipalities?
Well, I think we've seen the responsibilities put on local government increasing, and they have become more and more complex. And consequently, we are talking all the time to each other. As a matter of fact, we have a formal meeting 4 times a year. We call it TVS, Town, Village, and School. We take turns as to who hosts it, and that includes the Rhinebeck School District. So we all get together and we talk about certain things.
What kinds of things do you talk about?
Capital projects, how are you doing? Are you having problems with contractors? How are your performance bonds doing? How are your union contracts doing? How are you in
budgets. And we also
budgets,
talk about
equipment. Can I borrow some salt? Oh,
Right.
we're going together. As a matter of fact, we're going together, the three municipalities that were, for tonight, all came together this year and have in different ways in the past to have a uniform bid for paving work.
a joint paving bid, which is terrific. And so that comes out of those meetings where we're always looking for ways that we can share services in order to find economies of scale, to save money, to reduce administration, and to just be, you know, make it better for the communities.
And to get to know each other, because as you know, it's the informal relationships that really make things work so
Can
much
you give me an
smoother.
example of where that has really resulted in some positive for
I
our
can, I can
communities?
give you something that came out of the TBS meeting is that the 2 villages are talking about a joint bid for the windows that are going to go into a couple of the Village of Mamaroneck buildings and to the Larchmont Village Hall. So yeah, the manager, Rich Slingerland, was going through various projects. I said, oh, you're talking about windows. We're talking about windows. We've gotten to this point. You've gotten to that point. Let's talk.
And the joint paving bid is actually a great example. And we've even talked to the school about some of their back office operations because they have a much larger budget and a much larger entity than any of the municipalities. And whether we could actually use some of their back office to service the municipalities. And so we're always looking to see.
Do you think that that's a possibility in the future?
Well, there is some, it does seem like it could be possible with some of the IT, perhaps, or even some of the payroll. So we're continue to
Playing
talk
around
about
with
it.
I always use LMC TV as the prime example of intermunicipal cooperation.
Yes.
I mean, in the early 80s when cable companies came in, hard to believe this, hat in hand, begging for the franchise to operate in our communities, our 3 municipalities worked together to create a public access studio that is the envy of all of Westchester.
We also have the library. The library is
a
joint,
joint municipal.
and it's across the street from the Larchmont Village Hall. And because of that, the administration of things like payroll and personnel, workman's comp and all insurance claims is done with the Larchmont Village offices. And we dicker up the budget after we sharpen our pencils and go through the library budget by way of subscriptions.
But that's the town of Mamaroneck and the village of
And the
Larchmont.
village of
Mamaroneck
Larchmont
Village, of
has
course,
a
has
separate,
a
it
library.
decided several years ago to have a separate library district. So it has its own board of trustees and elections and budget, separate and apart from the
And
villages.
of course, you know that the town of Mamaroneck does collect the county and school taxes. So that's a huge service for both villages. And unfortunately, most residents think we get to keep all that money. And so people always are upset and telling me how they pay such high taxes, which of course I agree with because I myself do as well. Unfortunately, we don't get to keep most of that.
Yes, but here's the kicker. The town guarantees the payment of
Yes.
those taxes to the county.
And the school.
And
Have you ever found yourself having to cough up money?
Absolutely. Because
Having to put up the
there's
money.
no way to collect 100% on time every single year. But we do have an incredibly high percentage of collection rate. So we don't often get stuck with very much, but we are fronting the money. I would say.
Now, as long as we're talking about money, you're just getting into budget
Yeah,
season.
I
So let's talk about the real issue, money.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know, we have this impossible political tax cap in our state now. And for this coming up year, if we were to stay within the cap in the town of Mamaroneck, we can raise our tax levy by
I think you told me
1.4%, or less than that.
1.14%, I think.
Yes, 1.14%. So that turns into $261,000. We have a $34 million budget. So if you're talking about any kind of increase in salary or cost of doing business, that would eat that up in 1 second. Not to mention any kind of maintenance or repair or improvement that you'd like to do, because every capital expenditure is included in that cap as well. So in the town, and I know in the village as well, we're talking about maybe we should be charging fees instead of including all the payment for services in the town in your taxes.
Well, fees for what, for example?
garbage. That,
But also, we have already done one thing, though, and that is we've created a sewer rent law. So right now, people pay for their water based on their usage. And we said, why don't we have people pay for their sewers based on their usage, instead of everyone just paying based on the value of their house? And we can calibrate how much that usage is based on their water usage. So we have taken the sewer tax out of people's taxes in the unincorporated
That was
town
going to
of
be my
Mamaroneck.
question. Would you take money out before you add back?
And the fee that they will be charged for their sewer use will be based on their water usage, and it will be included in their Westchester Joint Waterworks bill.
now for the village,
Okay.
we're going in that direction. We've started it. We've analyzed several other jurisdictions' legislation, and we will probably be having a public hearing on this matter sometime in the fall. So we're just one step behind, mainly because we have a different fiscal year.
Okay, but do your constituents know what you're doing?
Well, we certainly held a public hearing.
Okay.
We advertised it as best we can. I mean, communications for local government is tough in our community. You know, we have our website, we have an email blast list, we have Facebook pages, but it's very difficult to proactively get the word out because, of course, most people read the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and we don't have many venues to really get people's attention. But we certainly used everything we have. It's on our website now explaining it. And we do expect that when people see it in their first bills, they probably will call and ask a few questions.
Okay, I just wondered what the response has been
You know
to
what,
this
so
change.
far, everyone has said they think it sounds more fair. And that's one of the things we're looking at in the town. Are there other places where we provide services that we can make it more user fee based, because it's more fair. If you use more, you should pay more, and be able to remove it from the tax charge. And as Ann mentioned, garbage is one of the things we'd like to explore.
Okay.
Because if you
It's really an expansion of a principle that's been used before. When you say user fees, I always think of recreation. In other
Yes.
words, if your
Yes,
child plays
exactly.
Little League, you
Exactly.
pay.
Right. If you use
you
the
don't-
pool, you get a pool pass.
You
and
get a
use it.
pass, or use a
Right.
beach, you get the permit
Exactly.
pass.
And so the services, and I believe the reason for local government is for the provision of services, vital services.
Absolutely.
And so how much you use of that, it's fairer to have it fee-based,
Okay.
which takes it out of the general fund. It takes it out of the taxation according to the assessment on your home.
It sounds like a fairer plan for sure.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see what it works out to cost
In
taxpayers.
cost, you know what, in the sewer rent law, we have calculated, we actually think it's going to cost people a little less than it does right now. But we will see, because it really does depend on usage.
But the option here is also fairness, so that people pay for what they use, and those who
Yes.
use less
Yes, we'll
pay
pay
for
less.
less.
And they have some control over it. That's the other thing, too. You know, you have some say in the actual charge. And the same thing would be true for garbage. I mean, if you live in a large house and have lots of kids and are generating lots of trash, you pay.
No longer, I'm afraid, but I did.
You pay about $500 a year based on the average assessment of a house in the town of Mamaroneck for an incredible service. I mean, we pick up anything
Yes.
just about twice a week, and we pick up all that recycling. But if you're a single person or an elderly couple in a house and generating very little garbage, you're still paying that $500 or $600 a year, because it's based on the value of your house. But why not change that? So, and it would also encourage people to create
recycle.
less
Less garbage.
garbage and recycle more. Because garbage, the tipping fees for garbage are expensive. We have to pay the county to get rid of our garbage. We don't have to pay for recycling. So it can save the municipality money, and it can save the individuals
well,
money.
Let's move to another subject that I know is dear to your heart, and that's sustainability. And it plays right into your suggestion
Yes.
about water usage. I mean, once again, when water is free, you let the tap run.
Right.
When you're paying for it, maybe you're a little bit more careful.
Yes, well, it ain't free. And the way we both buy water is that the more you buy, the more expensive it gets. There's no
Right.
volume discount with water. They have what they call excess charges, and it's a very complicated formula. And believe me, the less you use, the less you pay. The
that's
more
something
you
to work
use per unit, the more you
And
pay,
the
believe it or not.
sustainability issue is really important in the town of Mamaroneck. We have a sustainability collaborative, which is our environment committee, and we've done a lot of work in the energy arena that I wanted to mention, and this leads to the fees versus taxes discussion. And we're having a workshop or a charrette on October 3rd, Saturday morning. 10
Charrette
to
is another word for planning
fin-
session? Or
Yes,
meeting,
exactly.
yes,
10 to 12:30. And it's going to be at the VFW. And we're billing it as user fees versus taxes. Come talk about sustainability. And we'll talk about some of the progress and accomplishments we've had over the past few years as well. But it's really an interesting discussion. We'd really like to hear from people and what they think about
Be
it.
interested to see whether they show up. Maybe there's a way you can Skype in. I mean, with technology
Yeah.
today,
These
it's
things
possible.
are filmed, aren't they?
Yes, we
Well,
did
yeah,
have
they are
Ellen
filmed,
City
but,
last
but
time.
to have live interaction from people who can't be in the room. I mean, it seems like the technology should be
Maybe
there.
with Twitter or something like that.
Something like that.
that's
I mean,
interesting
it can
idea.
be done.
Check it out.
I want to turn to the village of Larchmont for a moment. Now, you folks were talking about hiring a paid administrator.
And we
I think the
did.
village of Larchmont was one of the few municipalities,
Yes.
The last one.
the last one,
The
in
last
which
one.
to
Tuckahoe
have
went down
no
last May.
paid administrator. It was all on the shoulders of elected officials who serve,
Volunteer
who
elected
serve without
officials.
compensation.
Yes, well, we decided to join the 20th century.
21st century,
the
I hope.
20th in this case. Public administration is a profession, and we have an entity with a $20 million budget per year. When you add on our water fund, we have our own water department. We have the library fund, a portion of the library. We have the general fund. We have our debt service fund, and it all adds up to over $20 million a year, with a police force, fire department, a DPW, a whole staff.
Sure. How many unions do you negotiate with?
4 plus 5, 5.
And this is in the little village of Larchmont.
Larchmont.
Sorry, I keep saying that. 5,000 residents? approximately?
Make it 6,000 up to
Okay.
10,000 during the day. We
Okay.
figure.
We'll have to talk about that. How that
no,
happens.
well, that goes into some other water calculations that we have. Our
Okay,
flow
but
monitoring.
have you hired an
Yes, we
administrator?
have. We've hired a young man named Justin Dottino. We stole him from the village of Scarsdale, and he's terrific. He has his MPA from the Rockefeller Institute, University of Albany, and he is very, very knowledgeable. We need someone to come and deal with basic situations, such as fleet management. What's the most effective way that we could run the fleet of a police department? How many trucks do we need? How often do we need to have them recycled? How's the best way to maintain these things?
So many issues.
So many day-to-day issues. And the point I'm going to make, though, is that even if we totally dissolved and became part of the town, well, remain part of the town because we are in the town, the number of
coterminous.
Well, the number of trucks, the number of snowplows, that doesn't go away. You still need X number of trucks to take care of X number of jobs.
The town of Mamaroneck has a paid administrator, Steve Altieri, fine administrator, and the village of Mamaroneck has also a very fine administrator, Rich Slingerland. Do the administrators get together regularly?
All the time.
They talk on a regular
All
basis.
the time.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I spoke to them. I used to be in the meeting where used to be the only elected official there. That's where they get things done.
Good.
Really, they are in
they're
constant
good
talking
friends, I
to
would
each other.
say.
Well, I think there has to be rapport. I
Yes, they have a
mean,
good
not everybody
rapport.
loves everybody, but you have to be able to
Well,
work together. I mean, you may not
they do.
remember this, but when I started this program, it was in the 90s, I was new to Mamaroneck, and I found that the town of Mamaroneck had gotten a very advantageous contract for leaf removal. And I was at a meeting where the village of Mamaroneck was completely blindsided and knew nothing about this advantageous contract. And I thought, gee, I'm new to this place, but both
Shouldn't these guys
municipalities,
talk to each other?
yeah, I mean, they both got hands in our pockets.
These fellows talk to each other all the
that's
time. As a matter of fact, I have, well, again, dragging the village of Larchmont into the 20th century is that we are starting several incentives as far as computerization on a vast scale of concern. And one of the things is that, okay, there's a program that the village of Mamaroneck just started in the building department. What is it? Who did you use? How you know, we went right down the line and found that it was going to be very advantageous
Since you
for the
brought up
village.
the village of Mamaroneck, the village of Larchmont has been dealing with a streetscape,
Yes.
a long, extended streetscape renovation.
Yes, I think the Tappan Zee Bridge is going to be a shorter project than the streetscape.
One, what's the status of it? And two, did you consult the village of Mamaroneck that underwent quite a streetscape renovation some 10 or 15 years ago?
We saw how things were done there, and there were certain advantages that the village of Mamaroneck had that we were trying to emulate. One of them was how did you get to bury the wires? And you know the great story about narrowing the sidewalks, and therefore the sidewalk wires had to be, the overhead wires had to be buried. Oh yes, absolutely. And what kind of trees did you put in?
There's a lot
you know,
of
all
talk about
that
that.
kind of thing. And if I sat down directly with former Mayor Lanza and asked him some very specific questions about going forward. There is a huge difference between Mamaroneck Avenue and Palmer Avenue. Mamaroneck Avenue, as you know, the great story of how they built up the whole avenue on, so they don't have bedrock, and we do for large parts of
There
Palmer
were lots
Avenue.
of surprises in the village of Mamaroneck, however,
Sure.
like buried oil tanks
Oh,
that
yes,
did
yes.
not appear on any surveys.
I've become convinced that whenever you have a project like this, as complex as it is simply a case of miraculous intervention if anything really happens right, because there are so many opportunities for things to go wrong, and they
In the
happen.
planning process, do you build in an expectation for things going wrong?
Contingency phase.
I mean,
yes,
it-
absolutely,
contingency,
absolutely
yeah.
have to, because what we found in just burying our new street lamps that have to go down 5 feet, we hit bedrock at 18 inches. Well, then, you know, you have to get a separate geoengineer,
Accommodate.
and they have to come, and it has to all be approved by the Department of Transportation, and you have to figure out the additional wind pressure if you put up banners on how deep these things go, all of which are necessary for health and safety. Let's face it, these things are heavy. You don't want them to
Sure.
fall down on anybody. But there you go. You know, we wanted to create an attractive Palmer Avenue business area so people would enjoy coming there. Stores would flourish. They think it would be a good thing to move into the village of Larchmont. And
And how are Larchmonters handling the delays? We're coming on second year?
It's going to be.
Third-
It's going to end in October.
Oh, good.
All of it is going to end in October.
Okay.
By God, it's going to end. It's going-
If you
but,
have to finish it
but
yourself.
It looks great. I think the brick ribbon was surprisingly attractive. I thought it was going
Brick
to be
ribbon
nice,
meaning
but
along the sidewalks.
Along the sidewalk, right.
Okay.
And it has also enhanced something that is becoming more and more important to the village, as it has turned out in the village of Mamaroneck, and that's outside dining. outside dining.
That
which has
certainly has
really
invigorated the village of Mamaroneck.
It certainly has. It certainly has. As a matter of fact, we're looking at our statute from pillar to post, and one of the first steps I did is print everything from the village of Mamaroneck on how they did it. Our statute is old, 1988, 1990. Things have changed. More and more restaurants are coming in. What's the best way to handle it? And that's what we're looking at.
That's what people want to do. I mean, they want to be out,
Sure.
and they want to be.
Also.
Yes, yes.
I mean, we noticed during the downturn, 2007, 2008.
Yes.
I mean, we
The
all lived
parking,
through that.
the train parking lots were empty.
Well, but in the village of Mamaroneck, suddenly people maybe were making a choice about not going to the city or other locations, but they still wanted to be out and amongst other people. And I think that that's a good, healthy reaction.
Right.
And the village of Mamaroneck definitely serviced that need and benefited from it.
And it's nice to be out in your own community.
It really is to see
because you can
everybody.
even walk. A lot of
That's
people
right.
even have the
Yes,
chance to
bicycle.
walk.
We've seen lots of people from Larchmont and town of Mamaroneck in the
sure
village of Mamaroneck.
Of course.
Not always.
right.
Now, one subject we really have to touch on is the Hampshire golf course and the proposed development there. Now, that affects all 3 municipalities. I mean, it's an enormous project. Nobody knows how that will turn out, but certainly we have a situation where there is an as-of-right development option, which will mean many houses on the golf course. Have you folks participated in conversations about the impact on your communities?
To answer specifically about the village of Larchmont, no. Because the project is not in the village.
No,
it's
it's
actually
not.
in the village of Mamaroneck, which has its own separate planning and zoning. I should tell you that I started my local government service as being on the town of Mamaroneck zoning board when the Carlton House was coming in and all of that.
And that's
so
near
when
the
I
train
moved
station,
to the
right.
village, it having its own zoning board, I had to leave the town zoning board.
But
so,
yes.
so to answer your question specifically, the town, however, the town
has been a little involved in that. 7 acres of that property are actually in the town of Mamaroneck, although none of the proposed development is on that 7 acres. But the
Probably on
access
purpose.
and egress into that area does go through the town of Mamaroneck. So that is how we are involved and certainly watching it carefully. But because they are their own separate government with their own planning board, zoning board, and governing body, we don't interfere or participate in that part of the process.
I wonder, some years ago, the village of Mamaroneck, very encumbered by development up county. I mean, obviously water flows down to the harbor. And years ago, the village of Mamaroneck decided that they would try to attend meetings of planning boards and other zoning commissions as such up county, at least to have heads up on what was going
Planning.
on, what was being planned, and perhaps to have a say or at least to express the concerns of the neighboring communities.
And in the review that will happen for whatever is proposed for the Hampshire property, the town of Mamaroneck will be an interested party, which means that we will have a say, an actual functional technical say within the State Environmental Quality Review Act, the seeker process.
Right.
And so we will definitely be watching that because we're concerned about the environmental aspects of that property, the flooding,
As
the
we all
roads,
know, these
right.
environmental issues don't know political boundaries.
They certainly do
I'm
not.
not telling you what you know, don't already know. Anne, Nancy, thank you so much for being here. Maybe we can do this again sometime.
Love to.
Yeah,
It'd be fun.
we'd like to. Thank you.
We will definitely try. Thank you again. And thank you at home for watching. I'm Alice Bloom. We'll see you next time.